Okay, we have the very last session, so we appreciate your time and attention. And with no further delay, I would like to call my panelists, Dr. David Still, Mark Haas, and Rachel Blaine. Please join me. So I see we have enough mics for everyone. We were worried about it, but it's really a good thing to have enough mics. So thank you so much. I will start with introducing you, and please have 1 minute to talk about your work, about your experience. So I'll start with you, David.
Okay, first of all, thank you for inviting me to talk to a group of people I normally am not talking to, but I'm David Still, the Executive Director for the CSU Agricultural Research Institute. Some of you may know me, and so hello. And so I read your proposals and we fund your proposals, and that's what we do for a living. I'm also a scientist, which I've been all my life since I was a kid. I always wanted to be a scientist, and here I am, still a scientist. And so my background's actually in breeding and genomics and in lettuce. So we worked with a lot of lettuce for many, many years, and still do, and including some nutritional values of it. And we've worked with medicinal plants for many years as well, mostly in the composites, but also with mushrooms, but that's another story. So good to be here.
Thank you so much, David. And Mark Haas.
Hello, thank you, Dr. Hassan. Mark Haas. We have a development agency called Helmsman Group in Portland, Oregon, where we have specialized in product development for a number of consumer product brands. We claim that we put about $5 billion of market value into the marketplace. And recently we started a tech company to support and create the infrastructure for food and beverage CPG. It's the last major industry that needs support. We still operate on email and spreadsheets.
Thank you so much. And Rachel Blaine.
Hi, everyone. Oh no. It's on. Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Blaine. So I'm delighted to be here. I love your campus. I went to UC Davis, so just the idea of being on a campus where there's farms and fields is really lovely. So my background is a little different. So I am a registered dietitian by training. I'm from Southern California. I also have a doctorate in public health nutrition. I went to the Harvard School of Public Health, and I was always really interested in how eating behavior, how we can help make the healthy choice the easy choice. And so that's really been my area of research and interest. And I've been on faculty at Cal State Long Beach for the last 10 years. And then about 5 years ago, I started consulting with the California Walnut Commission and helping with their health research program that helps provide grants and product. Walnuts is the product, to people that are interested in doing research. And then eventually the lovely woman who ran that program retired. And so now I'm their scientific officer. And so I do teaching, I'm faculty part-time now, and then I do this wonderful work. So I'm really excited to talk about how we can translate that science and get people to eat all the good plant-based stuff.
Thank you so much. And I would like to start with Rachel, since we are in the same business, students. And Cal Poly, is a teaching institute. We would like to know, how can academia and industry, from your experience being as a professor and now working with the industry, collaborate to meet the evolving demand from the consumers for tastier, healthier ingredients, and of course prepare students for the future of food agriculture. So we have two issues in here: how we can collaborate, close the gap between the academia and industry, and how we can train the students to meet those demands.
It's a great question. So in terms of how we can connect, I think hosting events like this is really valuable. So, when you have conferences and opportunities to connect, you get to hear what people are doing. I think collaborations like walnuts, California walnuts are a commodity, and so it's a food that's grown, but being able to provide that to people that are doing research or want to do projects and try different things can be a really good way, because sometimes when something is being grown, like a walnut, for example, the people that are growing it aren't, as we've probably thought about, aren't always the same people that are going to be doing the innovation of what do you do with it? How do we get the consumers to eat it? it. And so I think partnerships can be really valuable. I think students are super innovative, and I think there's a lot of energy and enthusiasm in academia. There's a lot of, people are willing to try good new things. In terms of how to prepare students, for anyone that's a student, I think I teach a course in media and communications using nutrition, and I think communication is incredibly important. AI is there. We're going to have access to so much information, but that does not mean that it's translating and meeting the needs of consumers and really helping us understand what people want and need and what those demands are. So I think getting comfortable with communication, whether it's public speaking, whether it's writing, whether it's doing visual design, regardless of your discipline, we're always translating our science to other people who don't always care or know as much about it as we do. And so that's a really good skill across all the disciplines, is to really work on those communication skills.
Well, thank you, Rachel. And David, I will extend the question to you. I met you last month in Sacramento, and I know you run the ARI Next Generation, where you train the students, and I saw that you're bringing all this industry, key players, you bring the academia. What's the goal, and how you envision students getting training or beyond curriculum that prepare them for the challenges for California agriculture industry?
So yeah, we run a program, and in our lab, we've had kids in the lab for 25 years, longer. And so we worked with a lot of students, and one of the things that you're always asking them in the laboratory is to solve a problem. If I actually own a company, or I am working for somebody, they're hiring me not because I can, lift 100 pounds, they're lifting me to solve a problem. So critical thinking skills is probably the best thing that somebody can learn. So first of all, if you're a student, you need to have rigorous academic background so that you have this training, so that it's in your toolbox, so that when you do see a problem, you recognize there's a problem, and you can reach back into that toolbox and you can think, how do I solve this problem? What are the principles of it? And one of the ways you do that, the best way to do that for critical thinking, is to get involved in research. There is no better vehicle for teaching critical thinking than saying, here's a problem, reading the literature, what's known about it, and then coming up with a solution, and then figuring out if your approach to it and your new information that you've come up with is actually going to make people money and solve the problem. And so that's what we teach in the Next Gen program. That's what research is about. And we know that 96% of all the students that go to school are never going to do research, but what we're trying to do is something that you can't do in an academic setting in a classroom, is teach critical thinking. And let me just add one more point. So where does this funding come from? It comes from the public. And this is the other thing that we teach in the Next Gen program, is how to communicate science to non-scientists. Because if the people out there in the audience, your grandma, your brother, your sister, your aunt, your uncle, your friend down the street, it doesn't matter. They're not a scientist. And if you can't communicate to them why you're doing it and what you're doing and the impact on society, then we're going to continue to lose that battle. And that's not something that we're teaching in our classes as well. We only teach scientists how to write manuscripts and proposals, right? That's a problem.
David, hearing you saying this, will you encourage undergraduate to do the research, even though we are in a teaching institute that we believe teaching is a priority?
Oh, of course, undergraduates, this is when you should start doing it. So this is when they should get exposed to this. And for ARI, what we do, we're in a matching program, and so most of our partners are industry. And so we want you to go out there and talk to industry and find out what are the problems. So work for industry, work on a project with them, do a summer internship, work for industry and see what it's like on a day-to-day basis. And because your professors aren't going to know, honestly, but they need to solve the problem that's in front of them that wasn't there yesterday and may not be there next week, but they've got to solve the problem. They need to do it by doing it, right? And so it starts from the minute you can actually get into college or high school. And the other thing is go and explore the world, because the last thing you want to do, you want to cast a wide net and not keep blinders on and say, this is what I'm going to do. And be adventurous and take a few jobs and see what you like.
Thank you so much, David. I wouldn't agree anymore that you should start research as early as possible. So, Mark, you're speaking on behalf of the food industry. how you find a better way to communicate the need for ingredients in terms of profitability, functionality? I mean, what are the mechanisms to communicate with the producers and, of course, with the ingredient producers and with the growers? Is there any mechanism exist, and if there is any mechanism that you will suggest to share those feedback?
Yeah, thank you. It's a good question. David and I were chatting just before we came up here. We're talking about commodity crops and specialty crops. I had a unique opportunity 6-7 years ago to work with a startup organization called Farmers Business Network. And their business enterprise was to provide the tools and skills and knowledge and education necessary for farmers to be true business people. And one of the biggest problems that I see, as you know, from a producer's perspective, is if I'm growing a commodity, and I'm speaking in part more about Midwest growers at the moment, they tend to switch between beans and corn, soybeans and corn. High commodity crops, the only way they really make money is managing inputs, hoping and praying, and driving yield. And the different outcomes with different hybrids don't always lead to what industry is actually asking for, and the integrators, the consolidators, the large processors, they are the ones that generate the specialty ingredient outputs that then command margins and premiums. So I had the opportunity to combine two opportunities with Farmers Business Network and Annie's. Annie's, you know, organic mac and cheese. We offered grower contracts that paid premiums on attributes that we were looking for so that we could produce the finished good exactly the way we wanted to. So specific to durum or spring wheat, where we were buying millions of bushels, we offered premiums to have the producers pre-clean, de-rock, de-stone, grow high specialty hybrids that would produce well in their region, their environment, that would yield the attributes that we were seeking and that would give us the highest quality product that we could take to market. So the thing that I see is a marketplace that allows for specialty crops or specialty attribution for farmers to be paid premium instead of taking the risk, which is what most of them do, to drive a commodity to figure out how to bring their product to market at a later point.
Thank you so much. And David, there's one thing that I was discussing with HW Almonds, the Harris Wolf, about the ingredients. So there are a lot of challenges that the growers facing, and they need to grow the crops, they need to process it, they need to generate some ingredients. So looking at all of these challenges, what are the things that preventing the growers or the producers, which is in between the growers and the final user, to meet the demands? Because we see some gaps between what the industry needs in terms of functionality, nutritional values, and what is available in the market. And we know there are so many challenges. There is crop, and there is water, there is a limitation of a process, there are some challenges with the energy, but what can be improved in the system to meet those demands?
So what's missing is knowledge, right? So you need to understand what the ingredient is, and you need to know the factors that are going to impact it. And that begins actually with the genetics of the crop that you're going to grow. It continues with the environment that you're able or not able to produce for that under the production. Most of that is not in your control. So you're just kind of at the vagaries of what the climate, the weather is at that season. And there's, other than hoping that you have enough water here, we're talking about California, that you're going to get your water deliveries, where this is the time of the year that we're going to start watching it until March and April. So if you have the water, then that's great. But now we have the heat, and that, your crops and your domesticated livestock, that will impact the final ingredients of that. So you need that to know that what you can control. The second part of that is if it's a biochemical compound that you're trying to increase the percentage of, you need to know the genetics behind that, because the more complicated that is, and plants produce, plants have way more than twice the genes that humans do. And the reason they do is for the secondary metabolites, and why they have the secondary metabolites is to respond to the environment. And so that throws all of your control out the window, literally all of it out the window, so that so that the environment will swamp the genetics. So that's a problem. So then let's just say that everything went our way, and maybe we were able to, because you could do it, you could fix some of the genes with CRISPR and make it less responsive to the environment. That's doable. And so we get to the processor, and then that's where you can actually start controlling things with literally every step of the way of how you process that. That's your greatest control right there. But if it's not in at harvest, it's not going to get past that. So that's a big problem. And so simply genetics and what you can control and what you can't. If it was a really high value crop and you didn't need a lot of it, then I would absolutely say you need to use a controlled environment agriculture to do that. And then you can breed for that environment. But there's a reason why you can't go and buy a high nutrition apple or lettuce or blueberry or yada yada. There's not one out there because of the environment. You can't label it because there's too much variability. So you can control the back end of it.
Thank you, David. Makes a lot of sense. And back to you, Rachel, since you have academic experience, you're working with the industry now. So we as academic, how can we gather meaningful feedback from industry, from producers, and integrate it or shape a curriculum to prepare the future talent to meet the both demands on both sides, the producer, the knowledge, and at the same time, the testing and producing healthier products on the consumer sides where the RTE is happening. So how we can get a feedback from both sides and build a curriculum that, bridge the gap between the producers all the way to the consumers.
And turn it off. I think there are many ways to go about that. I think one of the most important ones is to get students or faculty, together with people that are in different disciplines in different areas. Usually this, like I mentioned before, we're often very siloed. So health people are like, we need to eat this. This nutrient is really good. And then, someone that might be in sales or in a product is saying, this is what consumers are looking for. We're not always talking about the same things or looking at the same areas. And so I think cross-disciplinary training can be really helpful. I think getting people together in interdisciplinary environments. I mean, I think like this, right? We're hearing from people with a lot of different backgrounds, which I think is really valuable. And then also just reaching out and surveying. So my background is I'm a dietitian. I train future dietitians. I will literally send surveys to employers when I was running my program and asking them, what are the deficits in my graduates? Like, what are the skills that you wish that they had? And we try to integrate that back into our courses. So it's like, students are super tech savvy. They don't know how to use Microsoft track changes, or they're not very comfortable with Excel yet. I mean, no, but those are really, really important skills. I think it's similar with industry, right? So asking questions about where are the pain points for people that I'm in the more health research and marketing communications end versus growers. We have same goals. We're trying to encourage people to eat, from my perspective, walnuts, a plant-based food, but we might be thinking about it really differently, but there's a lot of potential alignment. So I think getting people together in the room is really valuable.
Thank you, Rachel. And I have a question for you, Mark. And we met in San Francisco last month, and we talked about pilot skills, how important in academia. So do you think, or would establishing a pilot plant in Cal Poly Pomona help to bridge those needs between the producers and the RTE the ingredient producers or the growers and the RTE producers who use the ingredients? And we asking this question is a bit selfish, but we try to put together a consortium to build a pilot plant, but we want to see the impact. Would we close that gap if we develop a pilot plant? We train students on growing, processing, and producing products, and do maybe even clinical studies. Do you think we can close the gap in establishing such thing?
I do, but it depends. I can think of 2 pilot plants with other land-grant universities here in the United States that have what I would call successful innovation programs, NCIT and Oregon State Food Innovation Center. And the reason both of those are so successful is they have community draw. Oregon is in a semi-urban area. You have a tremendous advantage being in the Los Angeles, Southern California area for urban draw. The one major differentiator that I see with those 2 pilot plants or innovation hubs are that they allow the manufactured product to go into commerce. That's the most important test. You need to be able to make a minimum viable product to have the consumer actually tell you through their pocketbook, their transaction, their purchase, I like this thing. You made something good. And you need that feedback because I guarantee you it's not going to be perfect the first time you make it. And so if you treat it like a traditional pilot plant where you have controls and licensing and indemnification and limit of liability and no access to commerce, it's not really an innovation hub that you can take your product to market to actually hear what consumers say about what you've made.
Mm-hmm.
Could I ask something about that?
Yeah.
Please go ahead, David.
So let's just say that you, as a business or maybe even a startup, were wanting to partner up with the university, the academia, and do that, and then license it, and then sell it, and then make a profit.
Sure.
What do the people out there in the surrounding community or the surrounding sector say about that? Is there any pushback against, this is an unfair competitive advantage that you're getting because you're working in academia and they're taking some of the investment off of the startup or whoever that company is? Is there any pushback on that?
I don't think so, and part of it is it's not free. It's not a service. You have to. It's still pay to play. It's low cost, low barrier to entry. But if I'm a business, so I guess I need to better understand your question. Am I a student? Am I from the broader community? Am I a
business owner outside of that thinking that somebody's out competing you?
Yeah. Well, so
if it's subsidized.
Well, it's subsidized, but many businesses are through different taxpayer outcomes in the United States. And so if I'm successful in my business, then I should be able to build a business, hire employees, contribute to the economy, pay taxes. And so it is a kind of subsidy, I hear you, but without the opportunity to test at small scale. The other option is go to a contract manufacturer as an example. But the minimum order quantities of most contract manufacturers are cost prohibitive. So those early ideas, those early kernels of a concept, a challenger brand to come into the marketplace will never get a foothold.
So I'll take the next question to you, David. And we discussed that. I mean, in the Midwest, a lot of growing of wheat, and we have centralized processing plants where we help all the growers to process their wheat or soy or whatsoever, and we try to implement more control to produce a high quality ingredients. In California, I don't see such thing. Do you believe that building some centralized facility to serve, for example, the almonds, the walnuts, the grapes, to create ingredients, locally produced ingredients that goes to the plant-based diets or plant-based food, energy bars, whatsoever, will help to add value to the growers and also generate ingredients that standardize and meet the demand for the consumers? Is such investment important for California?
Yeah, I think that that's an untapped potential. But I also think that every commodity is going to drive that bus. So if they see it within their commodity and it's a big enough commodity, and they think that they have, I don't think it ever happens, a big enough margin as a group to invest in it, then that will do it. And there's a couple that have kind of gone down that road, and there's nothing like success to breed copycats. And so if they do well, and they can see that venture, and it's almost always with academia, and it's with whatever needs. Every sector is a little different. It's like what is it that we need? And some of it could just be some of the valorization, right? So that's kind of a stream that almost never gets picked up, and never a lot of money with that. But we always see lots of clever different ways and people trying to come at it a different route. But that's a really tough thing to do. But most of it is on the conventional stuff and the research and the production of it to the market that's fairly conventional but always challenging. And part of it is the research that needs to be done. And I would also argue that at a much higher level of support, because those are problems that never get done. And as soon as you think that that's fixed, then another one's coming that you need to. And so some of it's biological, some of it's regulation, some of it's climate, some of it's supply chain. And so it's just a never-ending sort of thing. And I think those that have a well-integrated system, like we were talking about, not siloed, does well. So we talked about working with engineers, and this is an opportunity that we have in academia, which we still haven't capitalized on, where we don't do a good job cross-training our students. If you're in the College of Agriculture, you're going to largely take agriculture and a few biology courses and a couple chemistry courses. But we're not taking engineering courses, and we don't talk to any engineers that are interested in, there's a couple exceptions, in agriculture and biology. And so in academia, but also in the business world, people follow money. And so if you make that money available to them, you will create the condition for them to build the teams that are needed to solve the problems that we face. And it needs to be organized at a fairly high level. And who's going to do that? It's who has the money and see that there's money to be made. So some of it could come from the top down with agencies, the CDFA, for example. But it really is going to take some fairly significant effort, both a willpower politically and financially. But it needs to be done. It honestly needs to be done.
And that's,
I think that the ones that do it are going to show that this is a model for success.
and that's what we're trying to build in CPP. We want to build a pilot scale with the modules that can be scaled up for certain industries, for certain commodities. We're trying to build a consortium here in CPP. We're counting on our collaborators. One of our collaborators is Skift. Dan Rosen is hiding somewhere. We're trying to get few millions from them, hopefully. And we want to develop that into a larger scale where we help the commodities to build something that's feasible and meet the demand. Because when we look at we will look at plant-based diets. In California, we not only produce it, we are the main consumers in the nation. So we have a biggest market. It's not only we produce an ingredient. So most of our ingredients are imported from our state, and we still have a lot of potential, but it's untapped. It's not really explored. Like, for example, almond, walnut can go as alternatives in the meat analogs. Replacing pea is a good protein, good fibers. However, is not really explored. So we're trying to put this together and maybe move it to a larger scale that meet the demand for those commodities and, of course, add value to the growers. And that was the point.
And I'm going to say you need to build the conditions for innovation. That's really what it comes down to. So how do you build those? Because you can't predict. You need to be in a situation and the ability to innovate and solve a problem. And that comes with teams. And giving them ability, here's a challenge, identify the challenge, put some money, put some team behind it, and then see what.
Yeah, I'm trying to find my team. Nobody's here. Harmit Singh and the two engineers, my collaborators, they're all gone. So, well, we have one more question. I would like to ask it, and I would like to get your feedback, starting with Rachel, Mark, and David. So now, what career pathways are emerging in the plant-based food sector, and how can universities better prepare students to access these opportunities? And we're asking this question on behalf of our students who are also concerned about the future. You know, we mentioned the technology, the AI, so they want to know what type of expertise, what type of opportunities they need to learn, the skills they need to learn to meet those demands and have sustainable jobs and career success. I'll start with you, Rachel.
I think this is a really exciting time to be in the field of food and nutrition. I tell students that all the time. I think there's so many different opportunities. If you get bored, you can shuffle over and do something adjacent but different. And I think there's a lot of value. So when I think about plant-based specifically, my background is in health and nutrition. So I think having people that are interested in going into that field, very valuable. But even if you're not the healthcare professional, there are people that are going to need to educate them and to translating that science. So if you go into research, people that are interested in doing master's degrees and learning more about research is really important. On the other end, you have people that are very siloed. So they're all about nutrition and health, and they're singing the health choir. They're all there. but they're not translating that into products that people are actually going to eat that are accessible. So an example I'll give everyone is with walnuts, right? Many people, if you didn't grow up eating them just in your hand raw, you might think of them as like in a baked good or like on a salad, but you don't think of a lot of other ways. So if you're not naturally culinary inclined and gonna like chop and make your own like walnut meat or chorizo or something, and there's all these amazing recipes, you might not just do that naturally. But if you could go and buy it at the store, where I've had amazing walnut meatballs, walnut bolognese, all kinds of amazing stuff. If it's just like in public health, if you don't have access, you're not gonna change your behavior because you can't. So you can sing about the health benefits. So that's where we need people that are in food innovation, in marketing, in communications, and thinking about, okay, we know early exposure to nuts, for example, reduces potential food allergy risks. How do we turn that into like fun little tree nut puffs or things that people would actually want to buy that doesn't exist right now? And there's people, I'm just using walnuts because that's my world. We're talking about how great that would be, but it's not actually happening. So I think there's a lot of opportunity for people that can connect and listen to people across those fields to do really wonderful things. And then I'm going to say this, social media does exist, and there are people that are making a living communicating about plant-based eating. So, if you're really into that, that's an option too.
Thank you, Rachel. And if I am a student, I'll start to take down notes. It's really important. Communication, leadership. So please keep in mind, this is advice from inside, from a person who works in the academia and the industry. Thank you, Rachel. Moving to Mark, what is the skills that, and I know you're involved in the few last years in academia a little bit.
Yeah. So my advice to, I guess, pending graduates is gain experience. I'm going to build a little bit on what David said about critical thinking. You graduate with your academic background, you have the knowledge, you have the qualifications, you're certainly capable of doing the kind of work that we have in the food industry. But some of the most important skills that you can have is the basic experience. And I would encourage new graduates to take a job in a manufacturing plant to understand how things are made. At the end of the day, what we're doing is we're producing food products, and while they need to be innovative, they need to taste good, we can go through all of the checklists of the requirements, it's still a business. The business has to be profitable, and if you don't know how to bring a product to market and commercialize it so that it can be profitable, that consumers want, that's a gap that is not, in my opinion, teachable. It's earned and experienced.
Thank you, Mark. So business, profit, add those words. And David, I know you have a lot of experience advising students. And
so I'm going to say that, and I'll repeat one of the things I already said. You really need to be academically prepared. So when you're sitting there with your mentor, your advisor, and they say, well, you could take cowboy chemistry or you could take the real chemistry. Well, guess what? You should take the real chemistry. So always take something that's a little bit more challenging, because you're never going to get a better chance to educate yourself. It'll never be easier than when somebody's spoon feeding you and you're young. Now that said, you should be, when you graduate, we're going to hire you for your critical thinking, you should be curious. There's never been an easier time for you to actually learn something and find out information, real information, not the fake stuff, and educate yourself. It's never been easier. And so if you're just curious and you want to know something about it, go get the experience, be curious, and educate yourself just by reading. There is no substitution for reading. And I got to tell you a little story here. And when I was a kid working in a nursery, and these guys, it was a commercial nursery, and they were making money hand over fist. And I knew this because I was making the bank deposits. And I said, these guys don't know anything. And if I just got myself a little more educated, I could do better than them, and I could make a lot of money. So I went back to school, and here I am. But that was the thought I had, was like, oh my God, with a little more knowledge, I could do better than they. And that's always what you should think, is how could I do this better? And that's why they're going to get hired. And be curious. Read. You know, your math skills, too late. If you don't have them now, that's what I told my daughter. Learn the math, and then that opens other doors for you. But read, and that'll open every door for you. So that's what I'm going to tell you.
Well said. Thank you so much, Rachel, Mark, David. Big hand. And we have 10 minutes for Q&A. Thank you so much. I'm going to steal one of the mics, so we have 2 mics. Thank you.
Any questions? Yes, I'm going to run back to you because I need the steps. Yeah, I always wear my flats.
This question is for David. There was a discussion of California commodity producers. It sounded like forming a co-op for centralized distribution, and you seem to indicate that several of those commodity groups may be doing that. Are you willing to reveal to us which commodity groups are actively working on that?
Well, you know, one of the things that I see as most successful in terms of having, I'm not sure how much on the marketing part there are marketing, is the Strawberry Commission has done a really good job. The Almond Board has done a phenomenal job as well. And those two stick out in the top of of course, they're multi-billion-dollar commodities too. So, you know, if you're only, you know, a garlic producer. Well, the other thing, let me just tell you something, you know, the pomegranate is like the poster child of publications in health putting a commodity on the map, right? So if you find a clear-cut health benefit, then that helps solve that problem, and everybody's trying to do that. But it really started with an investment of here's a continuance of here's problems that we're facing with the industry. In almonds, for example, one of the big problems that they had was they got a really big bloody nose when the New York Times picked up how much water it really required to produce their crop. Well, you know, that's not the whole story, but they recognized that was a problem, and they actually are have put for many years now a lot of money in making them more water use efficient from not necessarily the breeding, because that's a little more difficult, but from the beginning to the end, working with the growers to the marketing and also the not only for the internal consumption inside the United States, but the export market. I guarantee you there's a lot of people working on that part, because that's where a lot of money's made, and you're made on the quality of your product. And you get the quality of the product by taking care of the whole product from when it literally goes into the ground until you harvest it. And that's how we make the money with our California commodities. And so there's some commodity boards that have taken it upon themselves, using growers' money, to make sure that works. And so whatever it takes, whether it's re-engineering how they harvest it or how they dehydrate it, then they recognize it as a problem, not facing an individual company, but the entire commodity in that sector. And that is a winning formula. But it takes money.
Hi, thank you for the great information all of you shared. So wondering, you know, protein is the big thing, right? Protein, no matter what area of food. But what about, you know, I'm hearing rumblings about fiber being the next protein, if you will, right? And gut microbiome. And so what are you seeing out there in that regard? And then the second thing is cultivated meat. Have you had any experience with that? Anybody on the panel? Thank you.
So those 2 different questions, totally different questions. I think the fiber goes to Mark because he was just in Mesta recently, and I think he will cover it very well.
Fiber is interesting. I've been in CPG, well, almost 40 years, and this will be the 4th time I've sold fiber professionally in my career. Probably the biggest peak of fiber sales was in the early 2000s. I was on the executive team at Kashi. So fiber is coming back. It's important. We're undernourished in fiber. Not so long ago, the FDA raised the consumption guidelines. It used to be 2 grams of protein for a good source. Now we're up to 3 grams, which is important. And so fiber is important. And there's so many studies, and I'm not the academician, and there's all of this brain trust in here can answer this question better than I could. But there is so much health connection to the lower intestines and fiber gut biome that it is an underserved area of academic exploration, in my opinion. I think we have a lot to learn, but it is up and coming yet again.
Thank you. And Rachel, would you like to speak about the cultivated milk, or I can step in? Thank you so much. So the cultivated meat is a great technology, and I have seen some really good progress in the area. We are developing those. We have some bioreactors, and we hired a new faculty who will expand on that. It's a very important technology, but again, I think my guest mentioned something is about the profit. So it's a bit challenging, is really difficult to scale up. However, we can't give up on technologies at the early stage. We have to wait. Like 20 years ago when we talked about 3D printers, nobody believed in them. But now what we see in 5 years from now, or 10 years maximum, it's gonna be in every house. You will print your own meal, because now the price dropped from 200,000 about 10 years ago to almost 1,200 now. In some companies in Italy, they produce them. They can come with a laser, and they can print your food, really good designs with protein, with fibers, with all the nutrients that you require, custom made, and for $1,200. So I believe the cultivated meat is at early stage. There are some progress. I think some companies in the Bay Area I visited recently, they have products, commercial, but I think the technology is at the early stage. So maybe 10, 15 years, we will see some significant improvement. And again, those, they have less challenges with what we discussed in the morning about the flavor and texture, because you're actually building the texture. I hope that helps answer your question.
We have a question back here, and I do want to call out fiber. I mean, once we get over this next protein focus, especially with GLP-1s, they're realizing we need fiber with the GLP-1s because it's delayed gastric emptying, constipation, diarrhea. So fiber will be the hot thing. Oh, it was over here. Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah.
This question was for Dr. Blaine. I was wondering, how do you balance the commercial goals of the company, or the company balancing the commercial goals with the food industry and the overall goal of being supported by science?
Oh, that's a great question. So, so from my perspective, so the question has to do with, is it like how I personally cope with the personal like push and pull of being an industry? Yeah, I mean, it's a legitimate question. So, one of the things that I really love about being part of the health research program is that I am the one that is, the one interacting with scientists, and I am and have been a scientist in academia. So when I provide somebody a grant, I'm providing them the grant, I say, enjoy the money, and then I find out what happens when they publish the study. And I am the person that's interacting, so I know the extent ethically of what our involvement is. That's not true for every single commodity or every single company, but it is often the case. And I think there could be very black and white thinking about industry-funded research. I will be honest, when I was a PhD student, I was like, I will never. I mean, I just remember having this like visceral reaction, like I would never. And I'm saying this in a room of food technologists. I wasn't with food technologists. It was around people that are comfortable or used to it. And so that was just my personal perspective. The reality, though, is there's all kinds of other research that comes out of commodity-funded research that kind of expands the field in a lot of other ways as well. And people just wouldn't be doing a lot of plant-based research if companies weren't paying for it. And I think given our current political climate, there's even less research funding that's going to be available, and that's going to have ripple effects for years and years. So in terms of how I cope, we work with really great scientists who are doing their own independent research, and I feel like I have the luckiest job ever because I get to give people money or walnuts, which is wonderful. Who doesn't want walnuts? Give them their nuts for their research, and it helps people's health. And I'm promoting a plant-based wonderful product, so I sleep really easy. So yeah.
Thank you. And I think we can take one more or two more questions. Yes.
Yeah, this question is for Dr. Bilal. You said that the 3D printing you project to be in every household in the future, and I can see where a 3D printer could have like structural similarities to like food, but do you see it have phytochemicals and antioxidants in the food that is 3D printed as well, considering the limitations it has on heat, on oxygen exposure, and bioavailability.
Great question. And just for the record, I'm moderating the session, but I'll answer that. So the beautiful thing about the 3D printing, you can have paste attached to the 3D printer and unlimited number. You can really have small tubes attached with a different paste, and you can inject them at the minute you want. So maybe after the thermal process, so you can add the vitamins, you can add your minerals, you can add antioxidants at different stages, and that's what will be the future. I have seen some progress in DNA-based nutrition, and that's something will happen. We started with the DNA, doing the ancestry was fun. I find out I'm from all over the place. I don't know how, but yes, from many, many places. But now I think the DNA-based nutrition becomes so advanced, they can predict the diseases you will have in 10, 20, 30 years, and what type of nutrients you should have in your diet to prevent those diseases. And I think that's where 3D printing will be an important technology, because you will custom made all the nutrients that your body needs based on your DNA needs, which is amazing because it's a very unique from person to person. So with that increase in demand, I think the cost for those 3D printers will drop. Again, when there's a huge demand, there is so many competition, prices come down. Same with the DNA analysis. Started with like $3,000. Now you can do it for $150. And I see that, yes, you can add all of these, because when it comes to technology, you can cook the food and introduce your antioxidant so you don't damage it, or add your vitamins after the food is cooked. So yes, you can design it and it will happen. I hope that answers your question. And I think we have one more question. We're good? Thank you so much. I would like to thank Rachel, Mark, and David for their time. And yeah, big round. Thank you. You know what, David? I was teaching the graduate course yesterday, and I promised them I will ask you, when is the next ARI, next generation, will be available?
January.
Firm.
So we'll start taking applications for cohort 4 in January, but I will tell you that we are going to have 2 internships that are available, and I'll put that out in next week, for the EDF, the Environmental Defense Fund. And so that's actually, if anybody's interested, maybe it's not this crowd, but you might have friends that are. Those are great internships, because the last person that we gave an internship, guess where they're working now? For the EDF. So there'll be 2 slots open, but for cohort 4, we're going to be getting at least 90 students. So that's a fair amount. And that ARI, Next Gen Grant, and that will be in January. Okay?
Thank you so much. Do you accept professors to apply for the EDF? No.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for your attendance, your focus today. I know it's been a long day, and we actually have more tomorrow, so more to come. What I would like to do is make an announcement, and I'll make another announcement tomorrow morning, but we have officially discussed that we will be holding our 3rd symposium, plant-based symposium, next year. So we're very pleased to know that we will be offering this again. What we'd like to do next year, for next year, is you'll see the proposals go out December 1st, the requests for proposals. Those will be extended to both industry and academics, so focused on both the scientific research and industry, to further this collaboration between research, industry, and bring them together. So we'll have both requests for proposals from our industry partners as well as from any scientists, speakers that are interested in presenting. And they will be due April 1st of 2026 for next November. So we'll share that, and we'll be posting the RFP on the website by December 1st. Thank you again for your involvement today. We will start again tomorrow at 8 o'clock, the breakfast and registration. We have 7:30 to 8 a.m. Please come, get your breakfast. We have a good, hearty breakfast for you. And then we'll end at 12 o'clock tomorrow. For those of you who are staying for our dinner, please go stretch your legs, maybe get a quick walk in, and we will return here for our dinner. And we will see you then. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.